Hi, welcome to the Libertarian Alternative. My name is Mark Selzer, and this is an educational television show brought to you by the Libertarian Party as a service to your community. Today's guest is Michael Badnarik. He is the Libertarian Party's presidential candidate, and today we are going to be talking about the Constitution. Now, Michael, you've been very inspired by the Constitution, and one could say this inspired you to run for president.
It did, and I've been studying the Constitution for about 20 years. And when I started studying the Constitution, I was moderately confused because I looked at the Constitution and I looked at our government. I couldn't see a relationship between the two. And one day it dawned on me that the reason that I can't see the relationship is because there is none. And unfortunately, most of what our government does these days is unconstitutional.
But hasn't America changed? I mean, shouldn't the government change along with the times?
Well, in this, the Constitution can be amended. However, the basic principles that the Constitution is founded on do not change. We are human. We have individual rights, and the government works for us. Those are things that will never change. And anytime the government tries to usurp its authority or to do any more than protect our lives, our liberty, and our property, then it is the government is exceeding its authority that was granted to it by the Constitution.
So I heard you use an analogy once about the Constitution kind of being a fireplace for government. Can you?
Yes, I can. I was referring to George Washington's quote. George Washington said that government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is fire. And like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. If you or I were to live in a log cabin, it would be necessary for us to have fire just to survive. We would have to use the fire to warm the cabin and to cook our food. And fire would be so important to our survival that we're very likely to have a special place in that cabin for the fire. And it would naturally be the fireplace. The Founding Fathers understood that government was also important for our survival. We need government in order to maintain peace. And the Founding Fathers, in their wisdom, created a very special place for the government, and that was called the Constitution. Anytime the fire is inside the fireplace, it's a good fire. And anytime the fire gets outside of the fireplace, you and I should automatically and reflexively stomp it out. If the government is inside the limits of the Constitution, it is considered a good government. But anytime the government gets outside the limitations imposed on it by the Constitution, you and I and all Americans should automatically and reflexively stomp it out.
So what kind of protections, what exactly does the Constitution give us? I mean, as an average American, what does it give to me?
Well, absolutely nothing. The Constitution doesn't apply to you. The Constitution doesn't apply to me. Article 1 creates Congress, and neither you or I are a member of Congress. The second, Article 2, establishes the President and Vice President of the United States, and until after November, after I win the election, it won't apply to me. And the Article 3 establishes the outlines of the Supreme Court. So the Constitution establishes rules and guidelines for government. We, the people, have rights, and we give government privileges that are outlined by the Constitution. So if you leave a series of rules for your children telling that they can only watch television until 8 o'clock and that they have to finish their homework and be in bed by 10 o'clock, those are rules that you impose on your children. That doesn't mean that you are subject to those rules. You could stay up, as late as you want. And we need to remember the relationship between the people and the government. And the government has limitations. We, the people, have rights.
So the Constitution, what that is, are the rules for the government.
For the government. And we give government privileges, specifically to Congress, and those privileges and powers are listed in Article 1, Section 8. Therefore, anything that our government is doing, which is not explicitly listed in that section, is by definition unconstitutional.
So it seems now, though, that there are no rules for the government, that the government is doing absolutely anything that it wants.
And that's the impression that I have. And I think that that is true because the American people have forgotten the difference between rights and privileges. They have forgotten the relationship between we the people and the government. And that's one of the reasons that I teach my 8-hour class on the Constitution, to remind people of the fact that government is supposed to work for us. We the people are sovereign citizens. We are the source of all political power in the United States. And without our permission, government basically is enabled to do anything that, unless we give them that permission.
It seems that the public now doesn't understand the difference between a constitutional republic and a democracy. Usually when we're referring to our republic in this country, in the media, we hear it referred to as a democracy. Is that true?
Absolutely not. And it's an unfortunate misunderstanding. The word democracy does not appear a single time in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights. Those people who remember the Pledge of Allegiance know that we pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands. And if they want to go to Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, they will discover that the Constitution clearly establishes a republican form of government.
So there are elements of a democracy.
That's correct. And democracy and a republic are the same because people are allowed to vote. However, in a democracy, people are allowed to vote on anything. And the majority wins and the minority loses. If this were a democracy, I can get 51% of my friends to vote and we can take away your property. 51% of the people can take away your rights or deny you the ability to exercise freedom of speech.
So let's say if we were living in a democracy and I was a black man living in a small town somewhere, 50% plus one
Absolutely.
could vote that black people were no longer allowed to go outside after dark, which is an actual Jim Crow law that existed, I believe. Then that would be the case. But thanks to the Constitution, the kind of laws we can vote in are restricted and limited.
Absolutely. A republic, a republican form of government, protects the rights of the minority from the will of the majority. If you have property, we can all vote, but the purpose of the government is to protect your property from the majority that's apparently getting out of hand. And the Founding Fathers loathed a democracy. They referred to it as a tyranny of the majority and basically referred to it as mob rule. Unfortunately, every president in the United States since Woodrow Wilson has been stepping up to the microphone and announcing that we want to make the world safe for democracy, implying that democracy is this wonderful virtue. And anyone who has studied the Constitution and understands that fact realizes that the Founding Fathers didn't like a democracy, and they specifically gave us a constitutional republic.
Yeah, I think that the majority of Americans, when they say democracy, mean constitutional republic, but they don't quite know how to define it, and I think that's a failure of the government school system in America, because it should be teaching that. There should be no student that leaves a school that doesn't understand that kind of a thing specifically.
I think the fundamental misunderstanding, most Americans have forgotten the difference between rights and privileges. A right is something that you can do without asking. A privilege is something that someone or some entity of higher authority allows you to do. For example, if I walk out of the back door of my house, I can walk back and forth on my land, and I'm not required to ask anyone. I have a right to walk back and forth on my land. If I wanted to walk to the store and I would have to walk across your land to get there,